Hi, I'm Gordon Smith from Akitra. We're a provider of compliance automation services, which help you to get through the compliance process from beginning to end far more quickly and efficiently than the manual processes of the past. We support a wide variety of compliance frameworks, including SOC 2, HIPAA, ISO 27001, GDPR, and more. The automation we provide means that companies such as SaaS providers no longer have to wade through endless spreadsheet-driven lists of tasks, create their own security and other policies, and then painfully collect reams of supporting evidence in a manual way. To give you a better understanding of what this whole process is like in practice and what its benefits are, I'm here today with Ashish Kar, head of product for Araali Networks. Welcome, Ashish. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Very happy to be here.
Great. Can you start by telling us a little bit about what your company does?
Sure. So Araali Network is the industry's first resident patching product for cloud native application. Resident patching is very much like virtual patching, which means that one, it can be applied instantly and there is no need to recompile or redeploy your application. Two, it can be applied externally to any app, any language from any source. And three, it can be applied proactively as a code because it is independent of vulnerability itself. But unlike virtual patching, it does not attempt to block intrusions, but make the app resilient to misbehaving under the influence of any attacker. With Araali, you patch once and prevent forever. This is a form of offensive defense, if you will, where even if an intruder gets in, it's dead on arrival. We don't let it do anything beyond what it's allowed to do.
Okay, so what kind of problems would you say that you solve for your customers?
When customers move to cloud, they are generally worried about becoming the next Capital One, which suffered a massive breach in 2019. This is mainly because cloud security is complex and confusing. The cloud providers put the onus of security on companies as part of the shared responsibility model. Araali enables its customer to fulfill this shared responsibility in a very seamless manner.
And who are the kinds of customers that you sell to?
When it comes to a target customer, we generally target customers who are either moving to the cloud or they're already in the cloud, and especially in the software and financial service sector. So that's our sweet spot.
Okay, great. So let's talk about how your whole SOC 2 compliance journey started. Why did Araali decide the company needed to become SOC 2 certified in the first place? And what were your customers telling you about why they wanted you to be SOC 2 certified?
Yep, great question. So Araali is a SaaS security company. Most of the enterprise that we are selling to are very concerned about three things: security, scalability, and performance. For us, it's very easy to showcase scalability and performance during our POC. But security is something which is hard to prove to the customer, even after we talk about all the security procedure and controls that we have in place. Getting SOC 2 certification meant that we can show to our customer that we are walking our talk and taking that extra care to make sure that everything is secured.
Okay, and what kind of internal expertise did your company have in SOC 2 compliance and how to obtain that compliance?
So it's interesting. Internally, we did not have any formal compliance expertise. So essentially, I raised my hand to get it done because I have deep security expertise, and also my rendezvous with compliance comes with my experience building security products to help customers become compliant. But I myself had never taken the compliance journey myself. So I took it both as a challenge and a learning experience for myself.
And that's actually very typical of a lot of our customers, that they don't have a whole lot of that kind of compliance expertise in-house. So I understand that you'd talked to a number of your peers at other tech companies, as well as to compliance consultants in order to figure out how to achieve SOC 2 compliance. So based on your research, what kind of compliance challenges were you expecting and perhaps even dreading?
Hmm. Yep. So, like any entrepreneur working for an early stage company, I reached out to the network, all the folks that I knew. And talking to them, I learned that compliance, in some sense, meant creating hundreds of documents to show we are doing what we claim to do. And I was personally kind of scared thinking about creating these documents, then managing version controls, and then keeping them up to date as a company evolved. I already had my hands full, and the fear of documentation and extra work was something that like made me really think about something out of the box versus like doing the traditional thing of using spreadsheet.
So I can understand why that would have been very intimidating and why you would have looked for alternatives. So what alternatives did you consider in figuring out how to get through the whole compliance and audit process?
Yeah, actually, it's interesting. Being a startup, resource is always a constraint for us, right? But to save money, we even thought about manually doing the work first. But as I said, when I talked to a network of friends, I realized that it's like almost impossible to for one person to do it manually. And when we compared it to the cost of doing it with an automated tool, it became a no-brainer for us. We soon realized that the tool will help us A, save time, and B, it was clear that the automation was the way to go. Doing manually was like 2000s, and we are in 2020s. We have to do something in a more automated fashion.
Okay, so you decided that you were going to use an automated compliance platform. Why did you select Akitra specifically?
So we actually spend a lot of time evaluating the market. I had discussions with other vendor, but I found Akitra's team to be extremely hands-on and eager to collaborate to get work done. And I trusted them to be there when I needed help. And although several vendors were there and all claimed to be able to help with compliance automation, Akitra still had some key advantage that was strongly appealing to us. So as a security company ourselves, we were attracted to the idea that Akitra's root lied in security, not just in compliance, right? That security foundation was important to us. Secondly, their vast breadth of SaaS vendor integration was awesome, and combined with the ability to do automated evidence gathering from all those services, promised to save us tremendous amount of work. Finally, looking to the future, we foresee adding additional compliance certification, for example, ISO 27001 ourselves. So Akitra's ability to support multiple frameworks meant that they could be a partner for us on this long journey, and as our needs evolved over time. The last thing I'll mention is very important. It's trust. We really needed to make sure that they would be there to support us in our compliance journey now and in future. And their support has never let us down. So I know I've talked a lot, but in summary, I would say that we are very happy with the choice we made to partner with Akitra. It has really served us well.
I am very glad to hear that. And thank you again for choosing us. So you mentioned that one of your biggest concerns was the heavy documentation requirements of SOC 2, such as the need to create so many policy documents dealing with security, governance, and so forth. So how daunting was that task for you?
I would say that was one of my biggest concern. Even though I'm a pretty hands-on person and can easily work in the trenches, I soon realized that I needed an entire set of new policies. I think it was over 30 of them, and it was pretty overwhelming. But Akitra offered a very comprehensive set of policy template that I was able to easily take and customize based on our requirement. I think that alone saved me around 1 or 2 weeks of work.
So that gave you all the policies that SOC 2 requires for information security, code of conduct, disaster recovery, and so on?
Yeah. in a nutshell, yes, we got all the policies from Akitra. And to be honest, I had some understanding of many policy areas, but since we are a startup ourselves, we did not, or I did not formally document them as policy. And the good part is that we leverage Akitra's policy template to also internally align and adapt it to our company. And beyond that, having Akitra's template and their expert advice made this whole process very easy for us. And one simple example actually comes to my mind was around employee onboarding. It's a very common task. As part of the SOC process, we had to actually create a document. And if I think about our future employees, it has made their life much easier because now we have all these steps documented. It's kind of a checklist, and it ensures us that nothing is left behind and we do all the right things for our new employees as they onboard.
So I'm sure that will prove to be a big benefit in the future. And of course, a lot of our customers find that they get that kind of benefit from formalizing what had previously been understood, but never committed to paper, never formalized. So what about collecting compliance information from your key cloud platform and SaaS suppliers? How did you go about collecting security questionnaires or collecting their compliance reports, for example, to make sure that those third parties were also compliant? And of course, third-party compliance is an important aspect of the SOC 2 framework.
Yeah, so in that area, actually, most of our key suppliers were, or most of our key suppliers are pretty well known. And most of them have already gone through a pretty rigorous compliance themselves. So it was easy for us to get their proof of compliance and show that they were following all the right policies. In addition, Akitra also gave us an easy path to notify some of the other vendors and have them upload those evidence effectively themselves. So that made the journey very simple and easy for us.
Well, that's great. So it sounds that really made vendor management very smooth and efficient. What about the people side of compliance, ensuring that your employees and contractors have gone through the necessary security awareness training, for example, have acknowledged all the appropriate policies and legal agreements, such as NDAs? How did you do that with Akitra's platform?
That's a good question. So I think there are two parts of this question. So first is around type 1 and then it's about type 2. So first, let me talk about type 1. So we had most of HR related information in our HR SaaS platform. So for the initial round, which was type 1, I was able to download most of the documentation and upload it to Akitra as evidence. But for type 2, you actually need a continuous evidence gathering. So for that, we integrated our HR SaaS tool with Akitra in a way that Akitra was able to pull in all the right information on an ongoing basis in an automated fashion. This lets us track that every new employee is properly onboarded, that we collect the relevant compliance information for tasks such as they have completed required security awareness training, or for acknowledging companies' policies, such as they are following all the workstation security policies, which are like really important for us. Mm-hmm. So in a nutshell, this HR service integration illustrates pretty nicely how Akitra's automated monitoring and evidence gathering not only helps us stay compliant, but also to do it with far less work on our part. Mm-hmm. So that's kind of beautiful.
Okay, so yes, a lot of our customers really appreciate, those third-party service integrations in general, and the whole employee management side of our compliance service in particular. Mm-hmm. So moving on to compliance controls, as you know, SOC 2 requires that you demonstrate that you have a framework of controls in place to put your policies into practice. So how did Akitra help you in setting up those controls to implement your policy, as you mentioned a few minutes ago?
Right. So the control part was actually pretty simple, if I recall correctly. So Akitra had a set of controls in a platform that aligned with the criteria of the SOC 2 framework. And we really liked the ability to customize these. In fact, there was very little customization that we ended up doing. Also, based on our requirement, we could easily turn these controls on or off to get the right set of controls that we wanted to implement as part of our SOC 2 compliance program. Again, we really appreciated the flexibility to adapt controls to suit our needs accordingly.
Okay, so that gave you the right set of controls that you needed. And central to SOC 2 is the idea of collecting concrete evidence to show that you're actually following the controls that you put in place to satisfy SOC 2's criteria. One of the components of Akitra's compliance platform is our Shield module, which collects evidence about the security status of workstations, such as whether or not they're protected by antivirus programs, whether they're making use of multi-factor authentication, whether they're encrypting hard drives, and so forth. So how did you use that particular part of the evidence gathering capability of Akitra's platform?
Right. So this was interesting. So we actually asked our team to deploy the endpoint module from Akitra. And the process was pretty simple. It required me to add the names of the team members to the Akitra's user management system. And it did the rest, including sending out the emails to everybody with follow-ups to make sure that it was getting done. In addition, there was a dashboard where I could see the live feed of endpoints which are being covered or not. So I knew the security status of those systems. And it also gave me a very good way to follow up with people in my company who did not even deploy after like 10 days of like multiple follow-ups from Akitra. So in a nutshell, it was like pretty simple. I loved it.
And I can understand why. So if you had to collect that endpoint information manually, how would you have gone about doing that?
I think I would have to revert back to the hundreds of Google Docs where I have to take screenshot of everything, I guess. And it's not unthinkable because I think people have been doing that, but I think it requires a lot of time and resource, which is a luxury for most of the companies today.
So I can see why you would want to avoid that particular time waster. So what about gathering evidence from the cloud, such as the AWS services you use? How did you go about doing that?
Well, that was mind-boggling. It was super simple. So there are very simple integrations hooked to do that. So essentially, we created read-only roles for Akitra in our AWS account. And Akitra was able to collect all the required information automatically. I didn't have to actually manually collect any single piece of AWS compliance evidence.
That sounds like a huge time saver. As you probably know, we've created integrations like the ones that you just described with AWS and with your HR service with over 95 different cloud platforms and SaaS services. So in general, how did automation help you out with gathering evidence to support that Araali was really following its own policies and controls?
Right. I think automation meant that I didn't have to go and take snapshot across the board every day to prove that we as a company are continuously compliant. And I also believe that without automation, it would be really hard for us to prove SOC 2 Type 2 compliance, which really requires an ongoing measurement of controls.
Yeah, so that ongoing need to collect evidence continuously with SOC 2 Type 2 really is an onerous requirement if you're trying to do it manually. In fact, I don't even know how companies manage to keep up with that if they don't have a compliance automation platform.
Right.
So moving on to the audit phase of compliance, you got ready for the actual independent audit step very quickly in about 3 weeks or so. What had to happen to make that possible?
Uh, Actually, I would say it was 4 weeks, counting the initial setup time, but I would say it was a mix of two things. So one was our determination to get it done, as we had enterprise deal in a pipeline that depended on obtaining this compliance certification. And two, the automation and ease of use that was offered by Akitra tool drastically cut the time and effort involved in the process.
So great job of getting ready for the audit so efficiently. By the way, how did you find your outside auditor who performed that audit for you?
So interestingly, Akitra can recommend independent auditors, and we were able to take advantage of that without spending many cycles looking one for ourselves. I would almost call Akitra a vertically integrated package, although of course the auditor is independent of Akitra, but overall the process was very seamless.
And how did the audit process go, given all the tools that are provided by Akitra's platform and all the extensive preparation that you'd done by the time the audit actually started?
So in our case, our SOC 2 Type 1 audit was pretty simple. Given we had policies and controls in place and all the evidence we had collected, there were only a few questions that were raised by our auditors. So overall, it was a smooth process. And of course, the auditor could also take advantage of being able to use Akitra service, since all the policy controls and evidence were all put in a single repository. Once they had approved everything, they could simply download the core content that they needed for their SOC 2 report.
So it makes life easier for auditors as well, not just companies like yours. So how long did that audit process take?
The audit was done in a couple of weeks, from initial meeting with the auditors to the completed reports in hand. And getting ready for the audit using Akitra's platform took like close to 4 weeks.
No, sounds very efficient overall.
Indeed.
And once you had that SOC 2 report in hand and were fully certified, what was the business benefit to you of having that?
I would say business benefit were twofold. So one, we built confidence in our customer that we were practicing what we were preaching. And two, the certification also helped us close deal faster, with definitely the caveat that some customer might still have more questions. But hey, it's a very solid foundation of confidence to build upon. And that level of confidence and trust really cuts down on the question asked, reduces the need to fill out lengthy security questionnaire. And in general, it gets us across the sales finish line much faster, I would say.
Oh, great to hear. So looking back at the whole process, how did Akitra most help you achieve success with compliance?
As I was mentioning earlier on, I was totally new to this compliance process, and I was looking for a team that I could trust. I wanted a team that could be my guide, and Akitra team and the awesome folks were a great combination to help me complete this marathon faster and more easily than I could have ever imagined or hoped.
And that's our reason for being. So I'm very glad that we were able to help you achieve that. So looking forward, what's next for Araali in continuing with your compliance journey?
So we are quickly moving towards SOC 2 Type 2. After that, we also plan to look into ISO 27001 as we plan to expand in Europe and Asia market. Since Akitra already supports these framework, we'll leverage it to make our compliance journey smoother, I would say.
Great. Ashish, thank you so much for participating in this webinar. I hope everyone watching this has gotten a deeper understanding of how compliance automation can help companies successfully become compliant and become certified under a variety of different compliance frameworks, whether it's SOC 2 or other popular compliance frameworks. If you'd like to know more about either Akitra or Araali, please see the contact information on your screen. Thanks again for watching. Thank you very much, Ashish. And to everyone, please stay tuned for future webinars.